As I've been growing my business over the past 2 years, I have only used Bamboo Lab printers. And so when Elegoo reached out asking if I wanted to review their new Centauri Carbon, yeah, of course I do. So in today's video, we're reviewing the Centauri Carbon. Looks like this thing took a beating during shipping, but hopefully everything looks okay on the inside. Okay, some glass. And there she is. Ah, there's a box on the inside. I was wondering where this box was. Guess that makes sense. I was like, I haven't even opened any parts yet. Let's see what's inside this box. User manual, user guide, both of those probably important. Power cord, screen, tool holder, tools and supplies. Let's check out the manual. User guide. Take out the foam and toolkit from the printer. The user guide was in the foam toolkit. Unlock the heated bed. I'll just grab my handy dandy tool bag. The screws have been removed. Next up, install the touchscreen. Down. Okay. Out of there. I think the inside is cleaned out and ready for me to at least get it ready to turn on. It's not gonna break or anything. Plate's pretty cool. Got a textured PEI with adhesion 3 stars, and it says these are the ideal filaments: PLA, TPU, ABS, PETG, carbon fiber, and that's side A. And then side B is optimized for PLA printing. Tells you 30 degrees. It says it's a PLA specific plate, adhesion 5 stars. So that'll be fun to test out. All right, sliding the plate in seemed to work really nicely. Yeah, so far so good. Every time the plate one-handed just like fits perfectly where it's supposed to. We'll see as time goes on if my opinion stays the same. Power cord. Before I start, I want to get the glass on top. All right, nice. Everything looks good. Let's turn it on. Okay, we're gonna go English. I've removed the screws. It's free of foreign objects. And we are gonna start the self-check. While we're waiting for the printer to go through the initial self-check, let's take a look at the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Something I've been diving into recently is product photography. This is something in my business that I think needs quite a bit of improvement. I worked my way through a few classes in Skillshare, and I'm already feeling a lot more confident. But what's cool about Skillshare is the variety of classes that they offer. I also need to be working on video editing, 3D modeling, marketing. Skillshare was built for creatives, and their library has a class for whatever I need to grow my creative business. The hardest part is choosing one to actually focus on. There's so many. And so today, the first 500 people that click the link in my description are gonna get a 1-month free trial for Skillshare. So let's get started today and let's learn something together. Now, let's get back to the printer. It's done, finally. That really did take a long time, but we're ready to print. Let's get some filament loaded. I'm using Elegoo green because I have it opened and it's on theme. Okay, so like this, the light turns blue when the filament has been inserted, so that's pretty cool. Feels like there's a bit of resistance loading filament, but hopefully that's not a problem. Okay, let's see. Here, extruder, load. Grab the filament, got it. What? Check completed if the filament is extruded. If not, please push forward and click retry. I don't know, I wasn't watching. We'll try it again. I really feel like my filament has not even gone in there. I'm very confused. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, and the reel is rolling. Filaments coming out. Okay, completed. Happy day, we have filament. And now I think all that's left is to run this puppy. Network. Cool. Okay, so we are connected to the internet. Okay, So there's options for the 2 different kinds of build plates. I've got it on side A currently, so I'll just leave it there. But we will test side B. Alright, so I've got it on, filament loaded, and connected to the internet. I'm gonna try sending files from the Elegoo slicer and see how that goes. First up on my list of tests for the printer, a nameplate. This is one of my main products in my actual Etsy shop. So if this printer was gonna be a viable option for me to use in my business, it would need to print a nameplate correctly. And it did on the first try, with pretty good quality too. And I used stock settings for this, so it did great. Next, thanks to my good friend Dave down in the comments, I was introduced to the world of minifigs. And since this printer is supposed to be really fast, why not take on a big project and see how fast this thing really is, and test out the quality. I was able to complete the print and the build in less than 24 hours. This printer is so fast, and the quality is there too. I only had a small bed adhesion issue with these tiny connector pieces, but besides that, I had 0 issues at all. And I used Elegoo, Polymaker, and Overture filaments, and they all printed great. No adhesion issues, they were clean, crispy prints. I was very happy with the quality of the filaments in this printer. I didn't try out any other filament types like the silks or even PETG, but that just means I'll have to do more testing in the future. I was able to test out the filament runout sensor when I was printing all of these giant white pieces, and it worked fine. It paused the print, waited for me to go through the long filament loading process, pressed play, and it picked back up right where it had left off. Everything went smooth. For most of my test prints, I used side A of the build plate. It's what I'm used to, and it was the default setting in the slicer. I only had the one small issue, like you saw with the connector pieces, but besides that, everything else stuck great. I ran it at 60 degrees, washed it with a little bit of soap and water, and ran the bed leveling at the start of every print. The bed leveling does take a while, but I'm used to that with the Bamboo printers. It's much faster on the Bamboo printers, but I'm already used to the process of it going through the bed leveling at the start, so I allowed it to do that on every print with this one as well. It does take a long time, but you get clean, good adhesion prints, and so I say it's worth it. Hopefully they can make it faster though. When switching to side B, first I had to enable support multi-bed types in the printer settings in the slicer. That would unlock the option to change from textured PEI to smooth cool plate. The plate recommends 30 degrees, but the slicer has 35 pre-programmed. I tried 30 and had issues, but at 35, worked like a dream. And when you're sending the print to the printer from the slicer, just make sure the correct plate type is selected and you should be good to go. It will give you a warning if you don't have the file sliced using the correct plate, which I actually found to be incredibly helpful. Now, the slicer was very familiar feeling coming from Bamboo Studio. There are some differences, but for the most part, things were where I expected them to be, and they did what I expected them to do. That's a simple explanation, but I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're coming from Bamboo Studio, you'll probably be fine, and if you're not coming from Bamboo Studio, you'll still probably be fine. It was clean, simple, easy to use, straightforward. I liked it. You can also recall old files from the cache on the printer, which is nice because we can do that on the Bamboo printers, so it was an easy flow on this printer as well. One thing that I thought was a little odd, when a print finishes, the default green icon is to rerun the same print, which is cool if you're a print farmer, but if you're not and you don't plan to run the same print again, it's odd that that would be the default clickable bright green value. I don't know, maybe not a big deal, it just didn't seem like cancel was the best option besides run again. Small beans, but something that maybe can be improved. Okay, so the last thing I printed is this modern Easter Bunny help I loved on MakerWorld, and it helped me test out a few more things. I am pretty obsessed with fuzzy skin right now, and I loved this model because it utilizes fuzzy skin, and so I decided to test out the Centauri's fuzzy skin capabilities, and it did great. It printed fast, it looks super clean, there are no issues, and I even increased the fuzzy. And I also printed this one in ludicrous mode as the speed setting, and I printed it on the non-textured, the cool plate, side B, and it did great. I don't even see any real difference in these two. Maybe a bit crazier fuzz on this one, but I don't know. So overall, pretty impressed with ludicrous mode and the smooth plate. And the last topic I'm going to cover is the screen. Now, I am coming from the P1s, the bamboo printers, that do not have a very good screen, which is fine. I don't need a good screen, but I did like having a good screen. And this one is nice. It's bright. It has a bit of feedback when you press. You can tell that it accepted that you pressed a button. It clicks where you think it's gonna click. And the navigation is nice too. It's pretty simple, straightforward. I like the screen. I didn't really have any issues with it, and I'm excited to have it moving forward. All right, so that was a lot of good, which I think is where my overall feelings are about this printer. I mean, for $2.99, that was a lot of good. But there are some mediums, I guess, that do, I think, bring it down to this $2.99 price range. So the printer prints really fast, and the quality's good too. But everything else seems to take forever. To start out, the initial setup takes so long. It goes through all of these different tests, which is cool because it gives me a printer that works right away. I don't have to do anything. But when I was filming, I didn't know what to do with my time. I just kind of walked around and waited and sat on the table. I didn't know what to do with myself. With a bamboo printer, it takes 10, maybe 15 minutes and you've got the thing up and running. This one took a bit longer than that. It says 30, and I believe it took 30 plus to get through that whole thing, but it worked afterwards, and that's really all that matters because you only have to go through that the one time in the beginning, and then if you ever move your printer, you probably want to recalibrate again. But I guess it's worth it, especially being at $2.99. I'm willing to wait the 30 minutes to get a printer that works. Another thing that takes a long time is feeding the filament. And really, feeding the filament is most of my issues with the printer. The box that you feed the filament into, the filament runout sensor works great. But I don't like the tiny hole for the filament. Like, you have to be very precise, and it's not at eye level. And then inside the tubes, there's a lot of resistance, which is fine. I was still able to feed the filament, and it didn't have any issues when I was actually printing. But I could easily see there becoming issues once a multi-material system is added later on. If you've used the bamboo AMS, you know that if there is too much friction in your PTFE tubes, your AMS motor gets overloaded. But with this one, the amount of resistance and the friction that built up, it would have to be a very strong motor to feed the filament correctly into the extruder. So I am excited to see what they come up with and whether or not that becomes an issue later on. And the last thing I don't love about feeding the filament, and it's something I didn't even realize I needed, when you load filament into a bamboo printer manually, not with the AMS, you load the filament, you wait for it to heat up, and then once the nozzle has heated up, it does this like cycle, and that lets you know, oh, I need to grab the filament and help it load into the extruder. Okay, this one doesn't do that, and I didn't know I liked it until I didn't have it. For the Centauri, you feed the filament through into the extruder, and it's heating up the nozzle, and then there's no warning when it switches to grab the filament and help it feed into the extruder. You kind of have to be standing here looking at the screen because it'll jump from heating to feeding with no noise, no nothing. You just have to, oh, grab the filament and feed it, which was fine because I'm filming the video and I'm standing here next to the printer. But when I'm doing print farm things, I am not standing next to the printer while I'm waiting on it to heat the nozzle. I'm loading other filaments, doing other things, and then when I hear my printer go through that cycle that it's ready to actually feed into the extruder, I run back to the printer and I help it hit done and I move on. Maybe me being picky, but it was something that I'm glad I have for the bamboos and something that's hopefully fixable for this one, maybe with some added G code. And my last major gripe that doesn't have anything to do with the filament loading is the lighting. The lighting is so bad. Maybe it's because everything is so tinted, or the only light source is a tiny light bulb in the front corner, and maybe that's not a problem for you guys if you're not filming your prints, but for me it was a problem. I do film my prints, and this, I needed a few workarounds to make work. I had to basically print with the top off the entire time so that light could actually get in there. The inside's totally black, and I printed, unfortunately, with black filament at some points, and so there are some things you just can't see at all. Probably not a big deal for most of you guys, but for me, it's a little bit upsetting, and hopefully something that I could fix later by adding more lights on the inside, because I like the glass on, even though this one did say that when you're printing with PLA to take the glass off. I did that later on to help with the light situation, but I don't want to always do that, especially if they add the multi-material system and it needs to sit on top of the printer. Besides both of those annoyances, the printer works great, and both of those things are probably fixable, so I really didn't have too many issues with this thing. And that's pretty much everything I tested for you guys. Of course, there are some deeper dives that we could do here, but hopefully this was still a good overview. And for my thoughts, is it worth the incredibly low price of $2.99? Absolutely. And could that mean that there will be quality control issues later on? We'll just have to wait and see. And so my overall thoughts about the Centauri Carbon are positive. I do like it, but will I be buying more and adding them to my print farm? Probably not. I really like my bamboos. I am a bamboo fan, and until I see how this printer plays out in the future by them adding multi-material systems, it running through all of the testing of you guys now that you're going to be buying them too, I'm going to be waiting a little bit before I add more of them to my printer room. But for now, I really enjoyed testing this one. It was a lot of fun, and it's a nice printer for $2.99. And so, would I recommend someone buy one? Yeah, absolutely. Would I also recommend for them to wait a little bit and see what happens as they begin shipping out? Yes, I would 100% recommend you do that. But overall, I like this printer. I enjoyed being able to review it for you guys. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys are here. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something. Let me know in the comments if you guys think you're going to buy one, what you're thinking. That's all I've got for you, and I'll see you in the next one.